Hi, very good morning. I'm Dr. Janak Patel, MD General Physician. I'm still a student, learning every day. Today we'll be discussing on one of the very useful topic we call rheumatic fever. So these are the photographs which are showing you different criteria which comes in a rheumatic fever. We'll be talking of all those particular things. Like usual, we'll be discussing under definition, etiology, pathophysiology, clinical features, investigations, differential diagnosis, treatment and complications. There is one word which is being commonly utilized for acute rheumatic fever is rheumatic fever licks the joints and bites the heart, meaning it produces involvement of the joint but does not destroy the joint, but it can destroy the valvular structure of the heart. That's why it is called it bites the heart. What is acute rheumatic fever? Acute rheumatic fever is a multisystemic autoimmune inflammatory disorders which involves skin, joints, heart and brain. It is secondary due to group A beta hemolyticus which involves upper respiratory tract, and secondary to that there is an autoimmune inflammatory mechanism which plays a role and involves skin, joints, heart and brain. In acute rheumatic fever, there is fever with involvement of skin, joints, heart and brain. While in a chronic, by and large, skin recovers, joint recovers. You may have involvement of brain occasionally, not very common, but you get involvement of the heart very common. And the most common involvement is the endocardial part, which is valvular structures, results into scarring and destruction of the mitral valvular structure, aortic valve. These two are the most common valve which are being involved. There is something called as the Jones criteria, and now there are what we call as a revised Jones criteria for diagnosis of rheumatic fever. It is divided into major, minor and supportive criteria. Major criteria are carditis, polyarthritis, chorea, erythema marginatum and subcutaneous nodules. So these are the 5 major criteria. While in a minor criteria, there are clinical criteria like previous rheumatic fever or previous rheumatic heart disease, arthralgia, fever, etc. And as far as the laboratory parameter is concerned, which are included in minor criteria is ESR, C-reactive protein, leukocytosis, and in ECG, PR interval prolongation. There are supportive evidence of streptococcal infection like anti-streptococcal antibody ASO titer being high or anti-streptodones titer being high, and positive throat culture for a group A beta hemolyticus streptococcus or recent evidence of scarlet fever. When you consider this as a rheumatic fever, if there is a presence of 2 major criteria or 1 major plus 2 minor criteria, indicates very high chance of acute rheumatic fever and supported by evidence of group A's beta hemolyticus streptococcal infections. This is being recommended by American Heart Association. There are certain exceptions in Jones criteria. There are 3 special categories where diagnosis of rheumatic fever is acceptable without Jones criteria. That is, requires evidence of recent streptococcal infection can be ignored. That is throat culture, streptococcal antigen test, and increased ASO titer. Where now there are 3 conditions. If chorea is alone and if other causes of chorea is excluded out, or there is an incidence or less late onset of carditis or indolent with no other explanation. And third, patient with documented rheumatic heart disease or prior rheumatic fever or one major criteria or fever, arthralgia or high CRP suggest recurrence. These are the three conditions which are having exception to utilize Jones criteria. There are some words which are very commonly utilized in rheumatic fever is recurrence, meaning a new episode of rheumatic fever following another group A beta hemolytic streptococcal infection and which occurs after 8 weeks of stopping treatment. That is called recurrence, means it has to come after 8 weeks and by another episode of group A beta hemolytic streptococcal. While rebound is manifestation of rheumatic fever occurring within 4 to 6 weeks of stopping treatment or while tapering the drugs. This is called rebound. While relapse is worsening of rheumatic fever while under treatment and often with carditis. So this is the difference between recurrence, rebound. Rebound will occur after stopping treatment, while relapse will be on treatment, and recurrence is after 8 weeks of stopping treatment. That is called recurrence, relapse, and rebound. Subclinical carditis when a clinical examination is normal but echocardiogram is abnormal. Around 30% of the patient having chorea will have subclinical carditis. So invariably chorea may be associated with subclinical carditis. Indolent carditis, it is a common entity in our country where patient presents with persistent features of congestive heart failure, murmur and cardiomegaly. This is called indolent carditis. These are the few words which are utilized in case of rheumatic fever. It is also divided into acute and chronic. These are echo features where by doing a good echo, if you demonstrate mitral valve and aortic valve thickness, if there is an increased echogenicity of submitral valve structures, rheumatic nodules can be demonstrable, mitral valve prolapse or aortic valve prolapse or tricuspid valve prolapse. There are scores which are being given. Mitral regurgitation, MR, AR, TR, reduced mobility, chorda tear, pericardial effusion, etc. And if the score is more than 6, it is diagnostic in favor of rheumatic carditis. So this can be utilized and this is called Vigia's echo criteria. There is another echo criteria which were being published in American Heart Association 2015 where you can get involvement of acute mitral valvular changes, chronic mitral valvular changes and aortic valvular changes, which can be either acute or chronic, and depending upon that you can label that as rheumatic fever. Etiology wise, it is group A beta hemolyticus. Genetic character wise, HLA, DR2 and DR3. There is a formation of an antibody which are recognized as an autoantibodies, and there are certain groups. In group A, it can be 1, 3, 5, 6, 14, 18 and 24. Autoantibodies will be there to cardiac structures like myocardium, pericardium or endocardium, or brain stroma, or to the skin and to the joints. We'll show you in a pathophysiology. Because of autoimmune mechanism, there will be release of inflammatory mediators, and this will result into involvement of a skin, joints, brain and cardiac structures. So there are three factors which are responsible: host factor, agent factors and environmental factors. Among environmental factors, infection by group A streptococcal, group A beta hemolyticus streptococcal. There may be drugs responsible or hormone responsible or ultraviolet radiation. There are genetic backgrounds like autoimmune response. We already mentioned that group A beta hemolyticus, which can be 1, 3, 5, 6, 14, 18 and 24, of which 5 and 18 are most common. Streptococcal sore throat, which can result into acute rheumatic fever, and finally it will end into chronic rheumatic valvular heart disease. Age wise, between 5 to 15 years, it is rare before 3 years of age. It is more common in female as compared to male. It is more common in developing country and underdeveloped countries. There can be new outbreaks. It is more common in crowded area, low sanitary, poor socioeconomic. In certain seasons like winter, spring or a fall. Pharyngitis but not impetigo involvement. So this is one diagram which shows you indirectly a complete pathophysiology. Then among environmental factors, especially overcrowding, there will be susceptible host which will have a genetic factor, which will have an immune response because of repeated group A beta hemolyticus streptococcal infection, and there will be precipitating events, infection with a group A beta hemolyticus which are having a virulent factors, particularly with 1, 5, 6, 19, and they will produce first episode of acute rheumatic fever because of antibody which are produced will act with antigenic material which are present on skin, brain structures, endocardium, other cardiac structures as well as joint synovial membrane, and it will result into episodes of recurrent rheumatic fever and which can end into rheumatic heart disease. Now, because of production of an antibody, that antibody is recognized as an autoantibody and that will combine with different structures like heart, brain and joints and will end up with rheumatic fever. There are two hypotheses which are put forward. One is called as a cross reaction, we call as a HIT1 therapy or HIT1 hypothesis, and there is a T lymphocyte invasion that is called HIT2 hypothesis. There are other two theories which are put forward is cytotoxic theory and immune mediated pathogenesis. Irrespective of what you consider, there is a cross reactions and there is a T lymphocyte invasion, and this is called 2-hit hypothesis. There are intracellular structures like cardiac myosin and brain contains tubulin, and these are recognized as a foreign material, and you get a cross reaction of an antibody of streptococcal reacting with this myosin and brain tubulin. And in an extracellular structures, laminin and lysoglenocyte. These are some of the area where you can have a molecular mimicry and can react with that area. So antigen will produce antibody and that antibody will have autoimmune damage to heart valve, subcutaneous tissue, tendon, joints and basal ganglia of brain. And also it can involve all the structures of the heart. So hyaluronic acid antibody will react with joints. M protein will react with myocardium. Remnoson and N-acetyl glucosamine antibody will react with valvular structures, while antibody against these structures can react with basal ganglia, skeletal muscles and brain structures. Untreated streptococcal sore throat can result into anti-streptococcal antibody which can have cross reaction with endocardium, joint, etc. That endocardium will result into endocarditis and polyarthritis, and because of endocarditis you will result into a scarring of valvular structure which will end up with stenosis or regurgitation, we call it a rheumatic valvular heart disease. So sore throat can produce, if person gets complete recovery, we call that as person do not develop any antibody with early treatment of antibiotic, person will not have rheumatic fever, but if not treated can develop antibody and can end up with rheumatic fever. So these are the structures which will be involved: valvular structures, myocardium, and you can also have involvement of pericardium. So following a rheumatic fever, you get involvement of all the layers of heart. Mitral valve is most commonly inflamed, and you can have MR or MS, and it can end up into heart failure. These are what we call as a histopathological changes, which are gross changes and microscopic. If you are interested, you can go through your at leisure time. This is normal. You can see absolutely shiny, thin, papery mitral valve. So it is absolutely thin, flexible valve and almost transparent. But secondary to inflammation, it is thickened, fibrous, there is a scarring, and this is typically described as a fish mouth appearance. This is typical in mitral stenosis. These are typical mitral stenosis, fish mouth appearance. This is aortic valve involvement, and these are the vegetations which you can see underneath the mitral valve. So these are the different, these are nodules on mitral valve. These are those nodular structures. This is Aschoff nodules. Clinical features wise, depending upon the acute and chronic onset, for acute, recurrent, relapse, rebound, subclinical carditis, indolent, we already mentioned all those words, and chronic rheumatic heart disease. We already told you that age 5 to 15 years, usually it is after 2 to 3 weeks of streptococcal involvement like pharyngitis or scarlet fever. Person will develop migratory polyarthritis and cardiac involvement, two most common features. Skin finding may be detected, may not be detected. Chorea is not very common, but chorea can be also seen in some of the patients. And you can have subcutaneous nodules, which are sometimes missed. Person can have a silent period of 2 to 6 weeks, and then there is a sudden onset of fever, pallor, malaise, fatigue, etc. And along with that, you get involvement of skin, subcutaneous tissue, you get joint involvement, you can have CNS involvement, you can have skin and cardiac involvement. But before that, person can have streptococcal sore throat, can have scarlet fever, tonsillar involvement, etc. So these are all the different manifestation of streptococcal involvement. At your leisure time, you can go through. These are the common, we call as the upper respiratory tract, like tonsillitis, pharyngitis. This is typical, and you will have a streptococcal demonstration. These are all the different pictures which you can come across. In scarlet fever, you will have a strawberry tongue, red crackle lips, circumoral pallor, red cheeks, palpable, red blanching, diffuse rash, sandpaper feel. This is typically described as scarlet fever syndrome. And depending upon the different findings, they give a different points. Temperature, cough, tender gland, tonsillar swelling, age, etc. are given different points. And depending upon that, you label that the person is having fever, scarlet fever or not, or total score. If it is as high, total score, the chances of streptococcal infection becomes higher. So score more than 5 is straightforward in favor of a streptococcal infection. This is typical streptococcal infection followed by immunological reaction we call rheumatic fever. Usually will occur after 2 to 3 weeks of streptococcal infection. Joint involvement, heart involvement, skin and brain. These are the four structures which can be involved. And these are the combined picture which is being shown: heart, brain, joints and skin involvement after sore throat. That same thing is demonstrable here. So all those picture: cardiac involvement, pericardium, myocardium and valvular structures. And histopathologically you can demonstrate Aschoff nodules. Joint involvement, brain involvement will produce Sydenham scoria, and you can have a skin rash, erythema marginatum, subcutaneous nodules. And on echo you can demonstrate vegetations on valvular structures. ASO titer will be high, ESR will be high, and you can have a positive culture demonstrating streptococcal infections. So this will be entire picture what you can come across. We already described this particular, so I'm skipping over. These are the major criteria, minor criteria. We'll be describing in detail the major criteria. So we'll be talking about major criteria first. If first time you come across two major criteria from Jones criteria or one major with two minor, it will be considered as a first episode or primary episodes. And we have already told you recurrent attack of rheumatic fever means a patient without established rheumatic heart disease. There is recurrent attack of with established rheumatic heart disease. These are the criteria: two major, one major with two minor. Here two minor plus previous evidence of streptococcal infection. Rheumatic chorea being a one major manifestation. Insidious onset of rheumatic carditis can be there along with rheumatic chorea. And chronic valvular heart disease do not require any other criteria for diagnosis of rheumatic heart disease. These are called revised Jones criteria. We have already mentioned these are the 5 major criteria, and these are minor criteria which you can put forward. All these criteria are there. That is arthritis, carditis, chorea, erythema marginatum and subcutaneous nodule. There is another way of remembering is carditis, chorea, arthritis, subcutaneous nodule and erythema marginatum. This is the way you can remember. So in acute rheumatic fever you can have a heart, skin, CNS and joint, while in a chronic mainly involvement of valvular structures, and among that the mitral valve is first to be involved, second is aortic and then comes other. So we'll be talking about these 5 major criteria: polyarthritis, carditis, Sydenham scoria, erythema marginatum and subcutaneous nodule. So first regarding arthritis, it is typically described as a polyarticular fleeting migratory polyarthritis, meaning one joint is involved. By the time this joint starts subsiding, there is a second joint involvement, and the first joint which was involved gets subsided. Second joints will now getting more and more inflamed. By the time it starts subsiding, there will be third joint involvement. Most commonly it is a big joints which are involved, like ankle, knee, wrist, elbow. These are the most common joints which are being involved. It is asymmetrical. It is fleeting, jumping from one joint to another joint. That's why it is called fleeting migratory polyarthritis. 80% of the time the involved joints are absolutely tender. You will have all the signs of inflammation, that is swelling, redness, pain and warmness. It is below 5 years age, usually mild, but carditis is more prominent. If a child is less than 5 years, carditis is more prominent than arthritis, but arthritis is the most common features almost present in majority of the person suffering from acute rheumatic fever. And arthritis do not result into any chronic involvement of joint. That is full recovery. These are all the different terms which you can utilize in joint involvement: asymmetrical, acute, painful, polyarthritis. Bone are absolutely normal, no residual damage. It is common in children, complete recovery. D for dramatic response to anti-inflammatory drugs like salicylates. Earliest manifestation of rheumatic fever. Fleeting polyarthritis, good prognosis. H for associated with high fever. I for involvement of large joints, knee, ankle, elbow and wrist. J for joints will show you all the findings of inflammation like redness, swelling, tender and will persist for days to weeks. K for knee joint is the most commonly involved joint. L for large joints. M for migratory polyarthritis. There is also one variety which you can see is involvement of small joints, very rare, and we'll have a correctable deformities, that is called Jacob's arthritis, very rare in case of a rheumatic fever, not common. Second common major criteria is carditis. When you get involvement of all the three layers, it is called pancarditis. By and large, in a pericarditis, it may produce a dry pericarditis with or without effusion, which will resolve within 2 to 3 weeks. Myocarditis will produce involvement of the myocardium, where you will have acute myocarditis producing tachycardia, cardiomegaly, and may be associated with congestive heart failure. But almost there is a full recovery even in a myocarditis. In case of endocarditis, there is inflammation of valvular structures. This valvular structure will produce inflammation plus edema. You can have acute inflammation involving mitral valve, most common, which can result into, in an acute condition, acute MR, and that will produce acute left ventricular failure or congestive heart failure with a murmur, which will be a short systolic murmur, mainly mid systolic murmur, which is also called as a Keres-Kumb murmur. And once it starts healing, it will end up with fibrosis, calcification, and there may be stenosis of mitral valve, which is called fist mouth appearance, and maybe because of fibrosis and calcification, maybe mitral regurgitation. But pure mitral regurgitation is absolutely rare. It will be usually with MS. But in acute phase, you can have a MR, which can be there. So murmur will be there, which is described as a Keres-Kumb murmur. Rarely you come across a TR murmur or aortic regurgitation murmur in acute phase. In myocardial involvement, you will have a tachycardia with cardiomegaly. In a pericarditis, you will have a pericardial rub followed by a effusion, which recovers almost completely. And whenever there is a myocardial involvement, you can have a PR prolongation. This is taken as one of the minor criteria. And when you get an acute myocarditis, you can have a congestive heart failure. And also, if there is involvement of the mitral valve, which is producing acute MR, you can have a congestive heart failure. So this is what we get picture in a case of a cardiac involvement. So in a mitral valve, you will have a mid systolic murmur, which is a hollow systolic murmur, grade 2 or grade 3, which will be heard very frequently at the mitral valve. And you can have a mid diastolic murmur, which is because of inflammation of mitral valve, called as a Keres-Kumb murmur, which is a mid diastolic murmur. So carditis is almost in 40 to 80% of the people. Mitral valve is the most common involved, and second valve is aortic valve. You can have a pancarditis, pericarditis, you can have a cardiac arrhythmias, and person can present as congestive heart failure also. Subclinical carditis is quite common in almost 90% of the people, and good number of times there is a overdiagnosis of this subclinical carditis. If you take the valvular structure, you can see that 92 to 95% of the time that is a mitral valve. Second common valve is aortic valve, but aortic valve will never be isolated involvement. It is always with mitral valve, and it is in 20 to 25% of people. Isolated aortic valve is very rare. Tricuspid valve involvement is also rare, and pulmonary valve is very, very rare. So this will be the typical picture. So you usually come across MS-MR with aortic valve involvement, maybe AR or AS. Carditis can be associated very frequently. Most common frequent association is polyarthritis, subcutaneous nodule, which are good number of time missed, and occasionally in 60 to 75% of people may be associated with chorea. But in a chorea, usually it is a subclinical carditis rather than full-blown pancarditis. Sydenham's chorea, also called as a St. Vitus dance. This is a third major criteria in a Jones criteria, or also called as a rheumatic chorea. So these are the three names commonly utilized. It occurs only in 5 to 10% of the cases, so it is not a common feature. Very commonly in female as compared to male, and it appears after 6 to 12 weeks after the attack of rheumatic fever. There is a clinical manifestation. It is described as a clumsiness, tremors, deterioration of handwriting, emotional lability. There is an abnormal movement of the face, we call grimacing of the face, pronator signs, lip chorea form movements in upper limb. It is also described as tongue movement is described as jack in box, and hand movement is described as a milking sign. There are many more words which are being utilized. So it is a rapid, non-repetitive, involuntary movement, deterioration of handwritings, deterioration in talking, walking, emotional instability, and this is all purposeless movement. There is also description as a milkmaid grip or milkmaid signs, lizard in tongue, lizard tongue, jack in box, silk fork, and bag of worm signs. These are all the different words which are being described. There is hypotonia, facial expression changes, we call facial grimaces, and it can present as late as 4 weeks. It disappears during sleep and very frequently associated with a subclinical carditis, quite common. The fourth major criteria is erythema marginatum, which occurs in less than 5%. It is unique, transient. The margin of that rash is reddish, that's why it is called erythema, is redness, and marginatum is margin. And it is 1 to 2 inch in size, irregular in shape. The center part is pale with a red irregular margin. It is never seen on the face. It is maximum seen on the trunk, limb, mainly on the lower limb, more common on the back. Non-itchy, very, very important. And it worsens with application of heat. Erythema marginatum is non-tender, non-itchy. Center part is pale, peripheral is irregular in shape. So it is serpiginous margin. Itching is absent, so no itching. Main site is trunk, and E is evanescent, early manifestation. So this will disappear within a very short period, and it is very frequently associated with carditis. But as it is lasting for a very short period, good number of time it is missed. So this is a typical, you can see the center part is pale and this peripheral part irregular shape, and those are reddish. This will be reddish. You can see this reddish margin. That's why it is called erythema, and margin is red, and it will disappear very soon, may appear and disappear in minutes and hours. So does not remain for a longer period. Very, very typical. Central part is pale, peripheral, irregular shapes, and that is reddish in color. Fifth sign is subcutaneous nodules, which is in 10% of the people. Again, these nodules are painless, pea size, palpable, and as they are painless, they are called non-tender. And they are most commonly seen at the elbow, knuckles. These are knuckles, these are small nodules, you can see subcutaneous nodules. And on the back, along the spinous process, very, very typical. Mainly over extensor surface of joints, spine, scapula, skull, and there will be seropositivity, meaning ASO titer, anti-streptodominase titer may be high. Very, very common, and it is very frequently seen along with carditis, but only in 10% of the people. Good number of times this is again missed. You can see these big nodules at extensor surface of elbow, very typical, and you can see even at wrist. These are even at wrist nodules, and they disappears within few hours to days. Very rarely it will last for a longer days. In minor criteria, fever, arthralgia, occasionally epistaxis, involvement of the serous membrane, that is serositis, may involve lung, kidney, and brain, may be included in a minor criteria. So arthralgia, fever, elevated CRP, ESR is taken as a minor criteria, and ECG showing a PR prolongation may be seen. So these are some of the criteria which can be utilized as a minor criteria. So two major with one minor or one major with two minor are considered as positive. So fever, arthralgia, pallor, anorexia, loss of weight. These are some of the minor criteria, but the most important is fever, arthralgia, ESR CRP, and prolonged PR interval. These are considered as minor criteria along with major criteria. So fever, epistaxis, etc. And previous evidence of streptococcal infection by means of a culture, ASO titer, antibodies, particularly ASO titer, anti-streptodominase, etc. If you demonstrate this to be positive, it is one of the evidence, associated evidence for diagnosis of acute rheumatic fever. CBC, very useful. Leukocytosis goes in favor. ESR high also goes in favor. C-reactive protein, blood culture positive, and PR interval prolongation in ECG. Chest X-ray not confirmatory but cardiomegaly with signs of CHF. In echo, vegetations, involvement of mitral valve, aortic valve, involvement of pericardium in the form of pericardial thickening, pericardial effusion, suggests involvement of pericardium in acute carditis. You can have also involvement of the myocardium, which can be demonstrable on echo. Throat swab and sending it for a culture. Anti-streptococcal antibody, ASO titer, anti-streptodominase titer, etc. are very useful. So leukocytosis, raised ESR, raised CRP, throat swab culture positive, anti-streptolysin O titer higher than 300, and anti-streptodominase titer if possible. If it is elevated, again goes in favor. We have already told you cardiomegaly, pulmonary congestions, signs of congestive heart failure, PR interval prolongation, or we call first degree AV block, T wave inversion not very significant. Even evidence of pericarditis you may see sometime in a ECG, and echo shows cardiomegaly, valve involvement, etc. are in favor of what we call as rheumatic fever. So these are all the features which you can go through. I've already mentioned all. This is very rarely required. You require an endomyocardial biopsy, very, very rare, to demonstrate S of nodules. This is a differential diagnosis between arthritis, carditis, and chorea. What are the conditions which can be there? Now, this is a differential diagnosis between acute rheumatic fever, joint involvement, and JRA. We call juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. In acute rheumatic arthritis, large joints; in GRA, small joints are involved. This is migratory in nature. This is additive arthritis. You go on adding one more joints. This remains for a very short period, while this is for a very long period. Very tender. This is painful, not very severely tender. This is showing you all the symptom signs of. Hello. हाँ बोल. हाँ हाँ अच्छा ओके ओके हाँ अच्छा. So joints are very tender, while in juvenile you will not get full-blown signs of inflammation in the form of redness, swelling, warmness, etc. It will be more red joints, inflamed joints in rheumatic fever. ASA titer will be very high. Sorry, ASO titer will be high here. It will not be demonstrable. RA test will be positive. Aspirin will give you very good effect in rheumatic fever, while will not be much effective in juvenile. Jacquard's is more common in juvenile rheumatoid rather than in case of rheumatic fever. Synovial fluid will show you less WBC, while in a juvenile you will have a more number of WBC. You will have a carditis more common here, while in a juvenile you will have a pericardial involvement more common than endocardial involvement. This is the difference between rheumatic and rheumatoid arthritis. Almost similar. This is more of acute, this is more of chronic. This is short duration, this is long duration. Joint, large joint, this is small joints. This is asymmetrical, this will be symmetrical. Rheumatoid arthritis will be symmetrical and mainly small joints. This will be migratory, this will be non-migratory. And fever is more common features, while in rheumatoid very rare you come across features. In that, ASO titer will be positive in RA. RA test will be positive in rheumatoid arthritis. Residual joint involvement in rheumatic is rare, while here it is very common. You will get a Swan neck deformity, Boutonniere deformity, good number of other deformities, jet deformity, etc. So these are the difference between RA and rheumatic arthritis. This is a difference between acute rheumatic fever and post-streptococcal reactive arthritis. This will be after 10 days. This will respond very nicely to aspirin, etc. There is no response. Non-migratory. This is persistent. Small joints and axial joints are more frequently involved. And it will last for 1 to 5 days or 3 weeks. And here there will be associated other major criteria. And this is migratory, it is transient, and large joints. That is knee, ankle, wrist, and elbow, very frequently involved. And after, this is usually after 2 to 3 weeks of rheumatic fever. This is after 10 days of rheumatic fever. Post-streptococcal reactive arthritis, PS. Once you confirm the diagnosis of rheumatic fever, there is what is called as a primordial prevention, that you prevent a streptococcal infection so that you can prevent occurrence of rheumatic fever. Primary prevention is prevention of acute rheumatic fever by taking certain prophylaxis. Once a person is diagnosed as rheumatic fever, that is called during rheumatic fever, and then treatment of complications. In secondary prevention, you can prevent recurrence. In tertiary, you will have to have a surgical intervention for treatment of valvular involvement, and then in all the cases you require a regular follow-up to find out the complications and progress. So symptomatic treatment during acute stage, like analgesic, anti-inflammatory, very commonly utilized is aspirin. If there is a clinical evidence of a streptococcal infection, you will have to give antibiotics, absolute bed rest, good nutritious diet, and for prevention of recurrent streptococcal infection, you will have to give prophylactic antibiotics, and also for prevention of infective endocarditis, also you will have to give prophylactic antibiotic every 21 days, that is Panidura, and regular follow-up examination for complications like chronic rheumatic valvular heart disease should be done at a regular interval. Precaution for streptococcal infection should be done. Penicillin is utilized for treatment of streptococcal infection and for prophylaxis. Aspirin is utilized for anti-inflammatory purpose. Prednisolone is very rarely utilized but mainly utilized to prevent fibrosis. If person has developed congestive heart failure, you will have to treat congestive heart failure. Bed rest is absolutely necessary. And in chorea, you will utilize the drugs which are called phenobarbital or chlorpromazine, or you can use diazepam, haloperidol, etc. And nowadays you can utilize even sodium valproate. And for infective endocarditis prophylaxis, you can utilize Panidura also, which will also help in prevention of a streptococcal infections. This is a chart which tells you what treatment you do during arthritis, carditis, and chorea. At your leisure time, you can go through. We have already mentioned all those things. So just have a look at this, because the most common is arthritis and carditis, and chorea is very rare, where usually we use carbamazepine and valproic acid, and you need a secondary prophylaxis. While in case of arthritis, mainly anti-inflammatory drugs you require, that is salicylates. While in case of a carditis, very rarely we require steroids, but mainly treatment of failure and aspirin is important. So this is another chart showing you the diagnosis and then what treatment you give in a different conditions. This is given in what is you give in a chorea, what you do in a congestive heart failure or in carditis. You also divide into 4 steps we call primary prevention, that is eradication of streptococcal infection. Step 2, anti-inflammatory drugs like aspirin and steroids. Step 3, supportive treatment and management of complications. And step 4, prevention of recurrent episodes. So this is the primary prevention: skin care, sore throat treatment, wash your hands, clean properly, take all precautions so that you don't get streptococcal infections, and regularly at 21 days interval you must take Panidura, and that is for secondary prevention every 21 days. So secondary prevention, these are criteria which you utilize: minimum 10 years after the recent episodes or up to the age of 21. If person is having acute rheumatic fever with moderate carditis, this is with mild, moderate and severe. Here the duration increases up to the age of 35. In severe carditis also it is minimum 10 years or up to the age of 35, depending upon which is the onset of the age. And in tertiary prevention, mainly tertiary prophylaxis, again you can give prophylactic antibiotics and prior to surgical procedures, and you can go for valvotomy or valve replacement that is treatment of valvular heart disease. That is, commissurotomy or valvuloplasty can be done. Nowadays, the catheter valvuloplasty is possible in some of the cases. But if it is very thickened valve, calcified valve, then you require valve replacement. And now valve replacement, instead of a metallic valve, they are all what we call as bioprosthetic valve. They are trying for streptococcal vaccines, but yet not 100% successful. Certain complications are very common during acute episode, that is congestive heart failure, acute left ventricular failure, acute MR, infective endocarditis, pericarditis with pericardial effusion, tachyarrhythmias, thromboembolic phenomena, post-streptococcal reactive arthritis, and PANDAS. In chronic repeated stage or chronic stage, mainly valvular heart disease, among that MSMR is most common. Second common is aortic valve, that is aortic stenosis, aortic regurgitation. Absolutely rare is pulmonary stenosis, tricuspid valve involvement. Infective endocarditis is very, very common. Persistent chorea is a rare complications. Pericarditis, sorry, spelling is wrong here. Chronic pericarditis is not again very common, rare. Secondary to valvular involvement, you can have a congestive heart failure or left ventricular failure or congestive heart failure. And person will have a cardiac arrhythmia because of left atrial, right atrial enlargement, etc. PANDAS full form is pediatric autoimmune neuropsychiatric disorders associated with streptococcal infection. This is not common, this is rare, but can be seen in a children, where you get obsessive compulsive symptoms after streptococcal infections. So once in a while, you can come across what is called pediatric autoimmune neuropsychiatric disorders associated with streptococcal infection. While we have told you post-streptococcal reactive arthritis is more common than PANDAS. So I end my lecture here. I hope this lecture will be helpful to you. No doubt rheumatic fever is not very common, but still you can see once in a while a person with rheumatic